This week, a look back at the history of E3. The biggest event in the gaming calendar has been going strong for nearly 20 years now, but it hasn't all been smooth sailing for the Electronic Entertainment Expo. This is Player Attack. But first, the latest gaming news, and as you might have expected, everybody is still buzzing about the brand new Xbox One, which we showed off in last week's show. A few more details have come to light since the big reveal, including the unsurprising fact that Microsoft's new console really will be region-locked, as much as we might have been hoping otherwise. What this means, basically, you will have to buy your Xbox One games locally. Discs from the US and other regions will not play in your Australian machine. Now, it's the same situation that we've seen with every Nintendo home console, the original PlayStation, and the PlayStation 2. But Sony changed its mind when it came to the PS3. We were hoping that, despite Microsoft locking down both Xbox and the 360, the publisher would buck the trend with the new Xbox One, but alas. Meanwhile, Sony is still keeping quiet on whether or not the same restriction will be in place on the PlayStation 4. In other Xbox One related news, we got our first look at what the game cases will look like when the console launches later this year. Simply put, we're kinda looking at a green version of a Blu-ray case with a sleek, minimalist approach. It's unclear at this stage whether Kinect-enabled games will still be in purple boxes, as Kinect is incorporated into the Xbox One by default. And while games fans spent months scouring domain registrations in the hope of uncovering a hint at what Microsoft would name its next console, it seems they were looking in the wrong place. Xbox1.com was registered back in 2011 by someone other than Microsoft. Obviously, MS couldn't make a fuss about the domain before the big reveal, so it's waited until now to file a dispute for the .com, and the UK-based owner apparently isn't too keen to move. Speaking of potentially outrageous amounts of money, Codemasters has announced what is officially the most expensive special edition video game commercially available, according to Guinness. The BAC Mono edition of Grid 2 contains a copy of the game, a PlayStation 3 to play it on, a custom race suit, a Bell racing helmet, gloves, and boots. And then there's the customised BAC Mono performance vehicle thrown in as well, bringing the total price to £125,000, around $190,000. This is not a replica or a scale model. This is a full-size, road-legal performance car. A 2.3-litre, 280 horsepower, 4-cylinder engine that'll do 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.8 seconds and tops out at 170 miles per hour. Made out of carbon fibre, this isn't quite the sort of thing you take down the shops, but it is still a pretty sweet drive. Of course, if the BAC Mono edition of Grid 2 is a little out of your price range, you can still pick up a more standard edition for PC, Xbox 360 or PS3. You will still get a BAC Mono of your own, but it'll be in-game instead of on-road. Sticking with racing, and EA has confirmed a brand new Need for Speed is in the works at a brand new studio. Ghost Games is working together with veteran developer Criterion Games to create Need for Speed Rivals, which sees gamers given the choice of driving on either side of the law. Pick a racer or a police officer and either chase or be chased. Need for Speed Rivals is due out later this year on current generation platforms as well as the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. We are really looking forward to checking this one out at E3. Looking to the future now, and sources are suggesting that the Assassin's Creed movie will hit the big screen in late May 2015. The only thing we really know about the film is that Michael Fassbender is attached to star, but we don't know which role he'll take, if the script will be based on one specific game or hero, or quite what else is in store. Wait and see. It might come as a surprise, but the Australian Bureau of Statistics has quite a sense of humour. We first saw it back in 2011 when the Census Twitter account popped up with some snappy, timely one-liners, and now it's back with a brand new game for iOS. The Melbourne-developed Run That Town uses real census data to populate versions of real-world towns, and it invites you to step in as mayor. Manage a happy city and your job is safe for another month, but if you fail, an angry mob will literally throw you out of town. And finally this week, we have noticed that video games are becoming increasingly serious business, so we'd like to point out an exception. While every second game these days is seeking crowdfunding, Nintendo, or rather Wario, has taken a different approach. Rather than cold, hard cash, the Crowdfarter website would like you to pledge tweets and Facebook likes, which will then be converted into digital rewards in the lead up to the launch of Game & Wario, which hits the Wii U from June 23rd. For more details and to keep up to date with the latest gaming news, head to playerattack.com. But for now, stick around, we've got plenty more still to come. Love it or hate it, it's E3 time yet again, with the world's largest video game event returning to the Los Angeles Convention Center from June 11 to 13. As we get ready to send Player Attack off to cover the expo, now in its 19th year, it seemed like a good time to give you a little background information on what exactly this event really is and just where it's come from.
The Electronic Entertainment Expo is, at its heart, a celebration of all things video games. It's a trade fair, an exhibition, a buzz of sensory overload, and the single event that sets the tone for the next year of video game hype. These days, it's an annual event held in Los Angeles, open only to the members of the games industry and the media. But it hasn't always been that way.
Back in the dark days of history before 1995, video games were simply shoved unceremoniously among the other tech at events like the Consumer Electronics Show or the European Computer Trade Show. Major game releases and new consoles nestled up against the latest hard drives, graphics cards and monitors, and not really given the spotlight they deserve. That is, until magazine Infotainment World had a chat with the Interactive Digital Software Association and came up with a plan.
The association, known these days as the ESA, asked consumer electronics show organisers if they could have a small space at the event which they could use as a meeting place. CES gave them the space but refused to let the small event invite its own participants or limit entry to selected attendees. It seemed that the games were doomed to forever be an afterthought at someone else's event.
Lucky for us though, a marketing manager was sitting in on that fabled CES meeting, heard how it played out and returned to parent company IDG with the news. The team at IDG and Infotainment World did a few sums, called in a few favours, turned around and announced E3, and the legend was born.
The first event was held in May 1995 in Los Angeles. While most events start out small and find their feet, E3 hit the ground running with one of the largest trade show launches in history. More than 80,000 people attended the 3-day event, with keynote speakers from the big console manufacturers. Sega showing off games for the Saturn, Nintendo with the Virtual Boy, and Sony, who made a splashy entrance into the video game market, taking the wraps off its brand new PlayStation.
Things got bigger again in year 2 as the games industry recovered from a major slump. E3 was quickly proving itself to be the place to be if you wanted to announce anything big in gaming. The 1996 event, held again in Los Angeles, saw first looks at Resident Evil, Final Fantasy VII, Tomb Raider, StarCraft and the Unreal Engine, even though we didn't actually get to see Unreal itself. Sega took the opportunity to launch a new mascot, the jester-like Nightmarean Knights from the Saturn's Nights into Dreams.
Nintendo, moving on from the Virtual Boy, unveiled its new console, the Nintendo 64, complete with a launch party featuring Cirque du Soleil.
On September 29th, N64 is scheduled for release in North America. The system is about to change. But before it does, we decided to invite 3 of the best gamers in the country to put it to the test. This is N64.
Good evening, gentlemen. We've been expecting you.
At the same time, Microsoft made its first attempt at telling fans that Windows was for gamers, something it's kept up for nearly 20 years since.
In 1997, the Expo packed its bags and moved to Atlanta, Georgia. This was the year of the first-person shooter, the Doom clone, with names thrown around like Half-Life, the original Unreal, Sin, Prey, Daikatana and Quake 2. Lara Croft was there, pardon the pun, bigger than Mario and Sonic combined, and the surprise favourite was the 4-person split-screen co-op of GoldenEye 007.
1997 was also the year that E3 showed it wasn't all sunshine and lollipops. While the event was meant to show off glorious examples of video games, Titus Software made an astounding misstep with the big reveal of Superman for the Nintendo 64. A 3D action-adventure platformer, the game has been almost universally panned, earning a game ranking score of just 22%.
1 year later, and games were certainly no longer just for kids. Monolith unveiled Blood 2 and Shogo Mobile Armor Division, Crystal Dynamics showed off both Legacy of Kain and Akuji the Heartless, and Red Orc took the wraps off of a brand new Prince of Persia.
More than 70,000 people crammed into the Georgia Dome in Atlanta to see the final development stage of the original Half-Life, and a video of Duke Nukem Forever. An obscure highlight of the show? Ultimate Collector for Beanie Babies, a $25 title packed with pictures and information about the massively popular plushie franchise.
Really though, 1998 was all about the original Gran Turismo, with Sony sparing no expense when it came to supporting its brand new racer, even hiring Foo Fighters to play at its closing night party. 1999 saw E3 returning to Los Angeles, where things have remained for more than a decade since. The big question was whether or not John Carmack and John Romero could survive without each other following Romero's departure from id Software. Gamers believed that Carmack was the technical genius, while Romero brought creativity to the table, working in what seemed to be a symbiotic relationship. Details of Romero's Daikatana and Carmack's Quake 3 were highlights of the show.
This was a big year for consoles too, seeing unveilings of both the Nintendo GameCube, then codenamed Dolphin, shown alongside Perfect Dark and Donkey Kong 64, and the Sega Dreamcast, which was set to launch on the 9th of the 9th, 1999, for $199.
Just 12 months later, Nintendo changed its approach, focusing on software rather than hardware at E3 2000, with Conker's Bad Fur Day a bizarre choice of style.
Oh no. It's gonna be one of those days.
While that was happening, Sony was doing everything right by the PS2, set for release by the end of the year, at an appropriate price point and with a whole stack of games alongside it.
Despite all that though, the hands-down highlight of E3 2000 for many people was a 5-minute clip of Metal Gear Solid 2, which was shown every hour, on the hour, at the Konami booth, causing crazy bottlenecks throughout the expo hall as hundreds of people craned their necks to watch.
Unsurprisingly, the traditional first-person shooter-centric attitude was put on hold for 2000, with the expo held just 6 months after the Columbine school shootings, which had been linked to video games such as Doom. Protests were held outside the convention centre, and the event marked a loss of innocence.
2001 saw a return to the hardware focus. The Dreamcast was on the way out, but the space was being amply filled by the Nintendo GameCube and Game Boy Advance. The Xbox, which simply didn't work at many demonstrations, and Sony's freshly announced PlayStation 2.
Sega, on the other hand, turned its attentions to game publishing, promising to overtake EA and become the world's largest independent publisher. At the time, that seemed perfectly reasonable, with Microsoft, Sony and Nintendo tripping all over themselves to announce the new titles that Sega was creating for their respective platforms.
E3 had been dominated by single publishers, consoles or titles in the past, but 2002 was something different. 2002 was simply Doom 3. It was the first new Doom in nearly a decade. We'd been hearing about it for years. John Carmack had been hyping us up with mentions of dynamic lighting, and excitement was at an all-time high. We were not disappointed.
That said, other major titles that popped up in 2002 included America's Army, Metroid Prime, and the surprise hit Battlefield 1942. This was also the year that Sony declared the console wars to be over. There were 30 million PlayStation 2 consoles in the wild, and the manufacturer proudly announced that no other console would go close. They were right.
Half-Life 2 stole the show in 2003, with the most buzz, the longest lines, and the most awards by the end. Nobody seemed to care that a significant chunk of the award-winning demo was actually made up of scripted events and not gameplay at all.
Proving that, back in the day, people could actually keep secrets under wraps, Sony surprised everyone with the reveal of the brand new PlayStation Portable. The announcement had been saved for the end of the press conference and left the audience gobsmacked. It was a massive, dare we say, game-changing event, with the impact felt by nobody as keenly as Nintendo, who held a press conference straight afterwards. 2003 was also the year that Nokia unveiled the N-Gage, but the less said about that, the better.
Straight to 2004 instead, and while we could see the PSP in action, we weren't actually able to play with it just yet. And that didn't stop it from winning a whole stack of awards, stealing many from right under the nose of the brand new Nintendo DS.
In fact, 2004 was a big year for things not actually making it to the show. As well as the PSP not being there, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas wasn't in LA either, despite being the subject of pretty much all the pre-expo hype. Instead, we got The Sims 2, an adult-oriented Legend of Zelda, and an in-depth look at Halo 2. Everybody knew that the big news, new hardware from all three major players, was coming in 2005.
And that, of course, is coming all next week in our second half of our special Player Attack look back at the history of E3.
This is Roy Campbell, and you're watching Player Attack. That's your mission. Do it.
If you've ever wanted to show off your mad gaming skills but had no way of getting the footage off of your console, have we got a treat for you. The Roxio Game Capture HD Pro console has just been launched in Australia, and it makes recording, streaming and sharing almost as easy as playing the game itself. The handy device will record straight to your PC using HDMI or component output, and you can capture gaming footage in HD, stream it directly to your Twitch TV account, or upload it to YouTube, Facebook or Rooster Teeth. The Roxio Game Capture HD Pro console retails for $179.95, but we have one to give away to a lucky Player Attack viewer. Thanks to the team at Mindscape Asia Pacific, we also have a stack of great games to go with it, including Pro Evo Soccer and Metal Gear, because what good's a game recording device if you don't have anything to record? All you have to do to win this amazing pack is head to playerattack.com, follow the links to the Roxio competition, fill out your name and contact details, and enter the secret word which is on your screen right now. The competition is open to anyone in Australia and runs all the way up until July 15th, with the winner announced on Player Attack Friday, July 19th. For the full terms and conditions, see our website.
Number 10, the Sega Saturn.
We are 5 years away from entering the 21st century. Humankind stands on the edge of the interactive age. You have come a long way. But are you ready for the future?
Introducing Sega Saturn. Aww, hit it! Sega's next-generation gaming platform, revolutionary sports and arcade gameplay, all with amazing new 3D experiences never before possible on home game systems. Wow.
This one was more of a good idea gone wrong. When the Saturn was announced in early '95, the launch date was given as Saturn Day, September 2nd. This was the date that was given to developers for the games, retailers, and the public. Then Sega went rogue. Number 10 of our list is Sega changing the sale date for the Sega Saturn. Out of nowhere, the company announced at E3 on May 11th that the console was for sale at Toys R Us, Babbage's, Software ECT, and Electronics Boutique right now for $3.99. The move was a huge misstep. Developers were angry that they couldn't capitalize on the launch, to the point where conspiracy theories sprung up about Sega trying to move their own software. Several retailers, most notably Walmart and KB Toys, felt burned and turned to adamantly support Sony, whose PlayStation was being sold at a lower price. The Saturn, practically dead in the water. Number 9, Duke Nukem Forever. Duke Nukem 3D was a defining FPS. It was risque, it was adult, and we'd already waited 2 years for a sequel. In April 1997, the first murmurings of Duke Nukem Forever were finally coming to light. After paying an astronomical amount of money for the Quake 2 engine, 3D Realms got down to business and development finally got underway. After a few screenshots, a trailer appeared at E3 1998. This was the first taste. The public was excited, the critics were impressed, but the developers were not happy with the progress. Then the Unreal Engine happened, and development started again. The rest is history. Number 9 on our list is teasing Duke Nukem Forever. For years, we endured screenshots, scrapped trailers, prototypes, and even the closure of the original developer. After the longest wait in gaming history, in 2011, we got a mediocre shooter that ironically felt rushed. Number 8. The Phantom Console. You know how consoles are basically very stripped down computers? Well, never has that been more true than with the Phantom. The prototype at the 2004 show turned a lot of heads. The system was disc and cartridge free, with an advertised price of less than $3.99 and all of its titles, which included every current and future PC game available via download. It sounded too good to be true. Well, the Phantom makes a number 8 spot because, turns out, it totally was. The system missed 3 release dates, which then changed to postponed indefinitely, pending further funding. It was never released, and it's long been considered that it was a scam. Number 7. The Virtual Boy. When people talk about hardware failure, it's probably the most well-known example is the Nintendo Virtual Boy. Like all spectacular failures, it started with the germ of a great idea: complete immersion gaming in a handheld console. At a time when VR headsets were actually seeming like the future of gaming, Nintendo figured that a home version would practically print money. Unfortunately, this isn't what happened. Number 7 on our list of E3 failures is the Virtual Boy. It had a promising display, but the combination of bad marketing, terrible games, and utterly failing to deliver on its promise of immersive 3D, the Virtual Boy quickly faded into infamy. Number 6. MK vs Killer Instinct Dance Off. This shouldn't really need an explanation and at the same time demands one. 2 fighting games at the peak of fighting game popularity. Violence was the order of the day, and the characters were robots with giant blades, horrifically maimed masked guys, and a velociraptor. And what is the best way to reveal these games to the audience at E3 1995? Simple! The 6 biggest E3 disasters saw both games putting on choreographed dance displays. MK may have come off better by announcing a cartoon and a full-length movie, as well as at least pretending to make the dance-off look like a real fight, but both of these games really should have known better.
And that's about it for this edition of Player Attack. Thank you for watching. Next week, we have the second half of our E3 special feature, looking back at nearly 20 years of the world's largest gaming expo. And while there were plenty of hits, Jimmy braces himself for the rest of his top 10 look at some classic misses. In the meantime, you can catch us on playerattack.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you've got something you want to say, send us an email, mailbox@playerattack.com. Till next week, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this is Player Attack.